But there's one they fear. In their tongue, he's Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
I think I can safely say we've all played or seen enough Skyrim over the last 14 years to know what a dragon shout is, right? They're basically just very powerful spells or buffs on a cooldown that you get by screaming. Well, thanks to Druidess Jess, we now have access to a handful of them in Fallout 4, and because I just seem to love injecting Elder Scrolls into my Fallout, and vice versa, it made sense to give this one a whirl and see if I could beat the game with only shouts. The major difference is that these shouts are coded as aid items, and as such you can use them from your inventory whenever you need them, or, more conveniently, hotkey them to be ready at a moment's notice. One huge upside is there is zero cooldown to them now. That alone means they are probably going to be ridiculously strong. Not to worry, my counterpoint for that is that I'm uploading this on April 1st, so if it ends up being stupid easy, I can just pretend it's an April Fool's video. Subscribe for more of my stupid loopholes. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. We start with all of the shouts in our inventory upon loading a save, and they are as follows. Auror Whisper, Become Ethereal, Bend Will, Disarm, Dragon Rend, Fire Breath, Frost Breath, Ice Form, Slow Time, Teleportation, and last, but certainly not least, Unrelenting Force. I will make sure to use all of them at least once throughout the video, just so you can see how they all function in Fallout. Anyway, in terms of creation, I just made an old man who could maybe pass as a greybeard, named him Sir Scream, and then set all of my specials to 4, as, to be honest, I figured none of them would matter. I head for Sanctuary to do a little looting and to test out the Fire Breath shout on the local infestation. Maybe a little overtuned. It and the Frost Breath are the only two shouts that deal damage directly, outside of potential fall damage from Unrelenting Force, of course. So, in other words, expect to see these two a lot. May as well follow things as intended, so I stop off in Red Rocket to meet up with Dogmeat.
Demonstrate the extent of your intellect.
Just ignore that. We then arrive in Concord and get to flexing our vocal cords. I start off with the Ice Form shout, which, like its original version, does freeze everybody solid. Major difference being it has a deceptively large range now, and any effects, be they damage or force, are registered on the popsicles but will not take effect until they thaw out. It is absurdly effective for shutting down large encounters when I simply do not care. I also use the offensive Frost Breath here for the first time. Again, just like the Fire Shout, it just inflicts cryo damage as if I were using Ice Mines or the Cryolator from the base game. Something I have just noticed is that you don't get any XP for killing things by using the shouts. Initially, I thought that was simply the trade-off for how powerful they were, but thinking about it a little further, it ties back on how they functioned in Skyrim. They were very useful to the player, of course, but they never had a dedicated skill tree, so relying on them too much would stunt your progression. It's a clever way to implement a similar drawback to overly depending on them if it was intentional. I do level up from completing the Out of Time quest though, and every single perk goes into improving endurance and perception, as well as the relevant perks that provide better defense for me. Also Lone Wanderer, because duh. The raiders inside get roasted and frozen, not always in that order, until we swiftly arrive at what I must assume is a very bewildered Preston. We offer to help before rushing back outside to do just that. I hadn't used it yet, so I started to have some fun with arguably everybody's favourite shout, Unrelenting Force. Much like the others, it too feels like it has been dialed up to 11 when compared to its Skyrim counterpart. Not complaining, mind you, this shit is hilarious, and spoiler warning, never failed to put a smile on my face every single time I used and abused it from here until the end. Deathclaws especially, for whatever reason, always seemed to get tossed into the stratosphere when they got hit by it. That said, would you believe he somehow survived all of this? Yeah, I found him down the street where after all of that, he got snuffed out by a random settler with a tummy ache. I returned for my reward, but more importantly, to ship the gang back to Sanctuary, while I then ran down the road to continue being a menace. It kept surprising me just how little most people seemed to care about getting ragdolled. Like, this did not hurt Wolfgang or Simone in the slightest, and in the end I still had to whip out the offensive shouts to finish them off. By now, Preston's back in Sanctuary, so I return and start following the Minutemen's questline. It's been a while since I sided with them, plus my otherworldly powers will make settlement recruitment an absolute breeze. Oddly, it's not Tenpines calling for assistance first, but rather Oberlin Station. Strange, but not unheard of. That said, I am still at the northern point of the map, so figured I may as well hit up Tenpines while I'm in the area. After all, I'm going to get sent there at some stage while building the army. On the way, like clockwork, I pay a visit to those at Satellite Station Olivia, as they have the locket that is required to draft the Abernathys to our cause. Using unrelenting force on mole rats turns out to be mostly pointless, as they always just pop out from the ground right in front of you, regardless of if you've sent them to another continent or not. I tested out slow time here as well, about what you would expect. After all, Fallout 4 already has a similar effect by huffing jet. Inside, and the weirdest thing happened. After trying and failing to use the teleport shout, which is essentially a stand-in for Whirlwind Sprint, I got attacked by one of their dogs. A single bite knocks me down, which is odd, but then, all of a sudden, a plasma explosion goes off next to me, and I die. No clue what that was, but it never happened again, and I'm pretty sure raiders don't lug around plasma weaponry this early on, if ever. Anyway, next go around, and I decided to use some of the other shouts that I've been neglecting so far. Ura Whisper highlights all nearby enemies to let you see them easier. It's decent, but having them on the compass already is good enough, I feel like. Bend Will gets tested next, and I don't know if mine just glitched out, but it didn't make the raiders join my side. More so, it just made them completely passive and not fight anybody. I suppose it could be handy if I end up annoying somebody that I need to speak to. And finally, Disarm is about what you'd expect. You scream at someone and it startles them so much they drop their weapon. Pretty good here, considering one of them is walking around with a minigun. All in all, I can see all of their specific uses, but much like in Skyrim, few things are better or more satisfying than just using unrelenting force to knock down multiple enemies at once. I clear out the last of them, grab the locket, and continue to 10 pines as it's very close by. Fastest recruitment ever, by the way. When I arrived, they were being attacked by a single raider, and once I kindly convinced him to relocate, I spoke with the settlers, and they thanked me by joining up with the Minutemen immediately. Why can't they all be like that? Regardless, I'm glad to have one so quick, so I double down by making my way to the Abernathy farm to hand over the locket and getting them to join too. Used the teleport properly this time. It has a range, of course, otherwise if you went too far it would probably crash the game, but it's mesmerising how fast you can travel with this if you aim it right. No doubt scared the absolute bejesus out of Blake when I materialised behind him out of a tomato. 3 settlements under our belt now, including Sanctuary, so figured what's one more while I procrastinate over Oberlin Station. That, of course, being the Starlight Drive-In. Not much to say, walk in, barbecue some mole rats for later, then take the land for ourselves. After, I start heading southeast, and when I'm close to the Corvega plant, I am attacked by sentient suits of power armor. At first, I am terrified of power armored enemies this early on, and more specifically, where the hell they came from. But it becomes apparent rather quick that they were part of the Creation Club stuff that is bundled with the newest versions of Fallout 4. Outside of the handful of creations I've shown in the past, like the Doom armor or alien weapons, I've never even looked into what most of these entail, so all of this was new to me. They hit hard due to my lack of energy resistances, but once more, being able to slow down time and telling them to chill out is enough to come out on top. I looked at the nearby corpse, which gave me the quest to investigate more on the matter, but I never even bothered to take it any further, as I wasn't that interested. Maybe in a future run. Over the years, I have gotten a strange number of requests to check out all the stuff they added to both this and Skyrim. Maybe one day, as for now, I continue south and walk right into Greygarden, and as it is yet another settlement, I take the time to hear their woes and agree to assist. Their quest is always the same, that being to fix up the old water treatment plant nearby. This means dealing with super mutants and mirelurks. Neither of which are too bad, but I did catch a stray missile to the face on my first attempt, which ended about as well as you think. Next try, rather than just kill them all or blow them away, I opt to abuse the Bend Will shout. Sure, they won't fight amongst themselves, but once most of them are all pacified and uninterested, I can just make my way for the door, only stopping to deal with a single skirmisher in the way. Inside, and the crabs charge one at a time, so can be brushed aside with a few well-placed frost breaths. I restart the pumps, then return to the robots to bring us to a total of 5 settlements. Okay, now it was time for Oberlin Station, as they were just a ways over from Greygarden. Naturally, this is technically my first Minutemen quest, so they send me to, where else but Corvega. Had some fun with this one. I'm starting to get the hang of the teleport now, and my mind is beginning to expand with all the ways I could potentially mess with this. With the day saved, they joined up, and after helping Sturgis spruce up Sanctuary for a bit more XP, I report back to Garvey and get yet another call for help. As I have gathered most of the ones in the surrounding area, he ends up sending me off to Greentop Nursery, which is a little east of 10 Pines Bluff. Not much on the trip other than a few ferals and a crashed plane. So like, did they just move in recently, or do you think they've been just chilling here for over 200 years until I rolled up and ruined their day? Also, love that there is just a suitcase here with a whole closet's worth of mostly untouched clothes that nobody else has thought to take so they wouldn't need to wear rags. Again, probably been here for 200 plus years. Anyway, at Green Top, and we are tasked with, what else but clearing out some raiders in a nearby dungeon. I know that's not what it is, but I'm using magic and it's structured like clearing out Nordic ruins in Skyrim, so I'm calling it a dungeon. I passed by that small aggressive super mutant camp on the way though, the one that's marked with a settlement icon even though it isn't. Started simple enough, I was teleporting in, making use of the force shout to knock down stronger enemies so that I could attack them while they were trying to get up. But it seems using the teleport too much was having side effects. Specifically, if I clipped inside of something then used it to get out again, like I did with this shack here, I would sometimes just get a massive speed boost as well as losing the ability to jump, and the game sticking me in this jumping falling animation. Using the teleport again would sometimes fix it, or in this case just cause me to fall over. I could still use the rest of my shouts while this was going on, so I was still more than a match for the mutants. But just let it be known, this happened a few times throughout the run, just in case you see me running at breakneck speed for seemingly no reason. I found that submerging yourself in water fixed the glitch, or at the very least allowed you to fast travel, which then solved the problem. Either way, it was not going to break anything permanently. Once I finally arrived at Dunwich, rather than painstakingly make my way down to the entrance, I made use of one of the final two shouts that I hadn't tested yet. As expected, the Become Ethereal shout makes you completely impervious to all forms of damage for about 10 seconds, so I used that to negate the fall damage. Still broke my leg on the landing, however. Pretty sure this was a glitch though, as every other time I used it for something similar, my skeleton remained intact. Inside, we don't have to go very far before encountering Bedlam, the raider boss. He hits hard and nearly gets the better of me, as for some reason the fire breath shout that I went to use removed itself from the hotkey bar, causing me to take a few hits while I stood there completely confused. Frost breath comes in clutch and saves the day, as I survive with the sliveriest sliver that ever did sliver. There is more to this place, but I got what I came for, and so I just left the way we got in. Again, I don't want to run the whole way out, so teleport does the exact opposite of the ethereal form and allows me to be out in no time. It's a great escape tool as well, as one zip away is typically far enough to lose most enemies, allowing access to fast travel. I return to get Green Top, and then because I can, I help the Slug with their super mutant problem at a nearby hospital. Really abused the teleport on this one. Seeing as I kept getting stuck in the terrain, I decided to use that to my advantage this go around and popped through the ceiling so that I could get behind the master locked door without the key and deal with the leader within seconds of entering the building. For the record, I did not make a habit of doing this, but there was at least one more time where I was curious about clipping that I will show in a bit. With the Slog standing with us, we were now big enough to retake the castle, so I guess that's our next major objective. If you think I didn't get sidetracked on the way, then you don't know me well enough. Specifically, I ran into Swan. Not that it was a tough fight or anything, but I just had to see what would happen if I Fusro Dad him. The results were as good as I had hoped. I also made a fitting outfit adjustment here. In one of the nearby raider outposts, you can open a locked bathroom door and inside get a steel sword and iron helmet from Skyrim. The sword is useless to us, but the helmet seemed all too fitting. The only downside is it still removes your facial hair when worn for some baffling reason. Surprised after all these years that still has not been patched. It seems like a very easy fix. Back on track, kind of, and I noticed Swan was back in the pond. This time I was going to deal with him permanently. Simple enough, given the overpowered breath I have, but the first time I tried to do that on him, this happened. I don't think I've ever died and hit the loading screen that fast. It caught me so off guard. So what I believe happened here is that my own shout killed me. Now, typically I am immune to their effects. However, the fire breath is, I believe, accomplished by essentially spawning a bunch of invisible Molotovs in front of the player that don't hurt you when they explode. But if an enemy manages to shoot, or in this case melee them before they blow up naturally, the damage becomes neutral, and due to how close I am to the blast, it kills me as well. That's what I think is happening at least. It occurred a few more times throughout where my head would just randomly pop like a balloon in bigger firefights. I tell Preston and the boys to hang back while I run around the castle and give the Mirelurks the cold shoulder. I don't think the game expects you to clear them all out this fast though, as even after cracking the eggs, there was an almost uncomfortable amount of waiting around until the Queen showed up to collect the kids. Sadly, she only flinches when you hit her with unrelenting force, so that plan's out the window. Although, oddly enough, when I used the ice form, rather than just stopping her in place, It takes away 99% of her health. Once that wears off, then she gets flung into the air like I wanted, also dies in the process if that was not clear. I then set up the radio, make Preston happy, and now to progress their questline, all I gotta do is let a few in-game days pass for Ronnie Shaw to show up. In the meantime, I make my way down below so I can disarm the landmines and deal with Sarge. It cuts out any of the hassle of her blowing herself up or me setting her on fire by mistake. A part of me felt like trying to teleport through the locked door to get to the artillery schematics early, but I was afraid of it soft-locking the Minutemen, so opted not to. No time like the present, as I have time to kill, so to Park Street we went to save Nick, but more importantly, flex on the Triggerman. Was using Ice Form to freeze the biggest encounter so I could effortlessly dart between them with Ice Breath to take them all out in one go a bit overkill? Yes it was. But consider it was also very fun. Tried using Disarm again for some variety, but sadly the Triggermen are too strong for it to work on them. Pretty much everything else from here on was as well, so that's why I don't use this shout much after this. I am including this specific use of Unrelenting Force in the video for my fiancée because she thought the way he ragdolled was particularly hilarious. I continued to toy with them as they can't do much to stop me, particularly this one who I used the ethereal in front of and proceeded to, as the kids say, aura farm. Back in my day, aura farming meant picking Lucario and Smash Brothers and letting his percentage get ridiculously high so he could do more damage. Now I'm just thinking of a Can You Beat Whatever by aura farming and it's literally just me playing as Lucario. Anyway, I blast Dino into next week, or the afterlife, semantics, before then rescuing Nick. Not a lot to go over on the way out, and as for Skinny Malone...
Any idea how much this is gonna...
Back topside, it's off to Diamond City, but to spice things up, I entered from the top. This isn't the clipping I was talking about before, as you could probably do this with a jetpack and enough AP. Once you get inside the city, you hit a loading zone and spawn at the entrance, like whenever you jump from Mass Fusion into Good Neighbor to break your fall. Me and Nick do the typical song and dance of the interview questioning, followed by raiding Kellogg's house for some of the last cigarettes on the planet. I then shove one of them into Blade Wolf's sensors and get to making my way to Fort Hagen. Thanks to clearing out the water treatment plant, I can travel there and head a little north as it's just down the road from the fort. Synths don't seem to have any strong resistances to fire or ice, so they are dismantled just as easily as most of the others up until this point. And now this is where I began teleporting through walls again. Mainly, I wanted to see what would happen if I clipped into where you fight Kellogg right away. Long story short, nothing. The lights remain off, he is nowhere in the room, and the only option is to clip yourself back out. I probably could have tried to get into the room right before the fight, as that would more than likely have hit the trigger to have him spawn in. But the time it would take to get the clipping right, it was probably honestly just quicker to run through the section normally. When I got to the main event, I decided I was not going to use the elemental breaths on him. Instead, I opted to let gravity do the work for me. Turns out, slow time, coupled with as many unrelenting forces as you can muster, does an absolute number on someone's internals. It killed the synths outright, but Kellogg kept kicking for a little while longer at least. I set this up a second time with the only difference being I crouched in front of him so I could get a better angle. Once he bounces around the ceiling for a bit like an aggressive pinball, I hear his death rattle to confirm the kill. Not that it was needed, as one look at this pretzel tells you he ain't getting back up. Outside and the Brotherhood are now here, so that means two things. First of all, I make my way over to the police station and deal with Dance's squad to make me their enemy, leaving the Minutemen as my only option. Do not worry about the railroad. And secondly, I now finally make my use of the last shout, Dragon Rend. Dragon Rend typically is used to weaken a dragon to the point where it cannot fly anymore and it must land. Considering vertibirds in Fallout 4 are essentially highly modified dragons, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what it's going to do. I have essentially turned myself into an anti-air cannon. This is going to be very fun. Well, enough time has passed that Ronnie has appeared, so I run through the construction and demonstration of the artillery, and then, since I'm dead set on being against the Brotherhood, go and build more of the rest of the settlements. Once that's done, it's back to the main quest, or in this case, I replay Chrono Trigger on my DS for a few minutes while the unskippable cutscene at the end of the Memory Den section plays out. Off to the sea that glows, and try not to be shocked when I tell you that it was the fastest trip yet besides that Sonic video, thanks to the teleport. It did kill me at one point for some reason. Not sure what happened, but gonna assume I just faceplanted into something too quickly. I demonstrate a few more times just how airworthy Deathclaws appear to be, and then get the quest to hunt down the Courser from Big Verge. How was the climb up green tech, you ask? Well... As for the Courser, if he wants to just be a slightly altered Kellogg fight, then he can face his demise in a similar fashion. The Railroad are long dead, so I step over their remains to decode the chip, and thanks to hoarding junk like a crazy person, I could build the teleporter with Sturges and deal with Father exactly how you expect me to. Having removed the head from the snake, we now have the option to take the fight to the Institute, which, ironically, begins with us on defense as an army of synths assaults the castle. Typically a hard fight, but even not breaking out the overpowered ice form or time-stopping shouts, I can still breeze through this. The damaging shouts still one-shot just about every synth except the coursers, and should I ever get surrounded, I just shout those bastards into the sun. Also, I know we are basically at the end and I could have mentioned this sooner, but as I have just been wearing a suit and do not need any weapons or ammo, the only thing I have spent caps on this entire playthrough has been stim packs, so I'm able to keep my health topped up easily. Also, even if I didn't, a majority of the coursers drop 2 stim packs each, so I have a steady supply of them thanks to this battle alone. All that leaves is the nuclear option, and yeah, we flew in, burned or froze the lot of them, strapped the pulse charge on, and blew the place sky high. Sorry if that's a tad anticlimactic, but it should be clear by this point, I am nigh unstoppable with these shouts. I activated slow time when touching the detonator, which caused it to glitch out and last indefinitely, so I had to watch the screen fade incredibly slowly to black before I could get back to the game. This also murdered the frame rate for whatever reason. Preston now told me it was time to dispatch the Brotherhood, and I congratulated his efforts thus far by showing him a shortcut to the castle. As for this second and final defense, even easier than the first. After the artillery destroyed the Prydwen, the attackers all fly in on vertibirds. Vertibirds, which I can one-shot with Dragon Rend. Very few managed to survive the crashes, and oddly enough, those that did were never hostile towards me despite all of my aggression towards them. I genuinely have no idea why. Before long, the Brotherhood is wiped from the Commonwealth, finishing the game and proving, oh yeah, you can most definitely beat Fallout 4 with only dragon shouts. Very stupid, very overpowered, and very few obstacles or roadblocks outside of taking the odd pot shot. I would highly recommend it as a power trip if you are feeling bored, or if you just want to mess with the teleport and unrelenting force shouts. Those alone make this mod worth the download. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.